Thanks for listening. This is Brian Hurley from Business Performance Improvement. The podcast Lean Six Sigma Bursts are short lessons, comments, Q&A, and insights. If you have a question, send your question through the Anchor app, and we might feature you on a future episode. Or contact me at biz-pi.com. In this episode, I share some Q&A I had at a presentation I gave for Lean Portland in July of 2023 for their happy hour. The presentation was around control charts and statistical process control and how to control conditions using the Nelson rules. I'll have a link to the full presentation in the notes. So I pulled out a couple questions and made a podcast out of those in episode 81, and here are a few more. These questions have to do with applying SPC into an office setting and what software can you use. The other question is what to do if you have data that is not from a normal distribution. So I hope you find these useful, and thanks for listening. Let me pause for a moment to tell you about our sponsor, Creative Safety Supply. Creative Safety Supply is a great resource for free guides, infographics, and continuous improvement tools. I recommend starting with their 5S guide. It includes breakdowns of the 5 pillars, ways to begin implementing 5S, and even organization tips and color charts. From red tags to floor markings, it's all there. Download it for free at creativesafetysupply.com/5S.
Most of the places that I've worked with are not manufacturing. So when we've used control charts, they are generally within the scope of a project. Hopefully it's not just the one project after they complete the training, but sometimes that's the case.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I see over and over again is I think, especially outside of manufacturing, or at least outside of manufacturing, I don't see as many of the statistical tools being utilized or being at the place with the maturity that companies can utilize them. However, the control chart kind of sits on that line to me. And I see a lot of value in people using control charts more frequently. But with it being in Minitab or in Jump or in these like complicated systems that companies don't always want to invest in, I've used like SPC plugins and things into Excel, but do you have any recommendations for creating these in a way that like companies that aren't going to invest in Minitabs still have avenues that their staff can use to create control charts?
Yeah, there are some Excel templates. I think I have one for the individuals chart, like in Excel. So that's easy. I'll dig up and send those maybe out to Maria, and you can send them to everyone. Or maybe if we're talking, I can dig one up. But so that's one option. The other thing is if you take out the control limits and the rules, just trending the data over time, I think is very powerful. And so that's usually a starting point early in a project. They're just trying to baseline and figure out what's going on. I'll just say Excel does that really well. You can just do a line chart and you can see patterns and you can see shifts in the data. It may or may not violate every rule, and you don't have to check for that. And you're not really sure what the control limits are, but just plotting over time, that data is really powerful. So that they can do in any program, and they'll pick up the obvious stuff there. This really helps to have the rules and the control limits when you start getting more refined and more detailed. I had another coworker that came out of the semiconductor industry. She said every day they reviewed 200 control charts because they had to stay on top of that. So the precision and the performance, and if those things drifted or shifted out of control, they were talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars a day. So that's when those control charts are really important and critical. But starting off, I think just trending the data over time is really going to pick up some obvious things and some easy things for them. But I'll look for the Excel templates, because there's some online too. I know you can search and probably find and download those.
Well, thanks.
And the Excel program, the plugin that I've been using is the Sigma Excel.
Sigma Excel. Okay. Yeah, Sigma Excel and QI macros, they're like $200, $300, and they're add-ins to Excel. They do a lot of the same features, so they're not very expensive. versus the 1,500 to 2,000 bucks for those other packages are a little pricey.
I'm pretty new at this. So what do you do if you don't have normal distribution, or where do you start?
Good question. So yeah, a lot of the rules are derived out of that normal distribution. One advantage is the X bar and R chart, like in the video, does not require a normal distribution on the data that you're collecting. There's a central limit theorem that kicks in basically, and when you do the subgroups of 3 or 5 or 10, it actually converges your data to a normal distribution. It's a very interesting theory that happens, but the X bar and R chart doesn't care what your original data distribution looks like. The individuals chart is sensitive to non-normal distributions. The more non-normal it is, the worse it's going to perform. So if it's a little bit off, it's probably going to perform pretty well. If it's way off, it'll flag a lot of false alarms and miss some things. There are other charts you can use for those non-normal distributions. You can also transform data if that's applicable, but that gets a little messy. So usually I recommend is try and figure out a way to do subgroups so that the distribution doesn't matter, and you can leverage the central limit theorem principle to make it work for you. But then there's other things we could do with like some of the range charts actually are non-normal distributions too, and they only flag the first 4 rules. And so the way that those were calculated, you could leverage something like that, but that gets into a lot of those other types of control charts. But there's usually a solution out there for whatever data type and distribution you got.
Yeah, great. Thanks for going there. Appreciate it.
Yep, good question.
Lean6sigmadefinition.com has a list of glossary items about popular process improvement terms, along with a history of Lean and Six Sigma methods, and key influencers like Dr. Edward Stemming, Henry Ford, Taiichi Ono, Shigeo Shingo, and many more. You can also learn how to access affordable Lean and Six Sigma training and certification. Visit Lean6sigmadefinition.com.